Hi, everybody. It's Alex Jarett. Welcome to Technology Executives Review, our video show and podcast. I'm Alex Jarett, your host and founder of Technology Executives Club, and again, Technology Executives Review. And you can watch all of our videos at technologyexecutivesclub.com. And we just opened up our YouTube channel under the name of Technology Executives Review. At the time of this recording, there's only a couple of videos on there, but check it out. Maybe you'll see this 6 months from now. You'll see all the videos will be loaded, and it's awesome. We're pretty psyched about it. You can also listen to our podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, again, under Technology Executives Review, or you can go to our site and there's links there. And today's topic I'm really excited about is hiring in the age of AI. And today I have with me our Board of Advisor member. He's waving to us, Tom Welke.
How you doing?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Hey there. I'm doing good.
It's good. So Tom is partner at RSM Solutions, and that is a recruiting, retained search, staffing, the whole thing, right?
Yep,
You do it
the
all,
whole gamut.
right? And as I recall, you're up in the Minneapolis area, right?
That's right.
You're up north.
Right on the border, Wisconsin and Minnesota.
So Tom has been with us for a little bit on the board of advisors, and he had this topic that he shared with me that he really wanted to host or talk about for a mentoring segment called Hiring in the Age of AI. So anyways, this is a really intriguing topic, hiring in the age of AI. And I remember when you first brought this to my attention, you said that AI has really changed the recruiting and hiring landscape, really just in the last year. Is that accurate? So how did you come about? Yeah. So how did you come about this idea for the mentoring session today? Tell me about it.
So the landscape has really changed quite a bit. So you're finding candidates using AI tools to generate resumes. You're also seeing candidates use AI tools to automatically apply for roles, whether it be through LinkedIn, Indeed, and things like that. So what you're finding is that every resume looks great, right? And it's starting to be very, very confusing for hiring managers in terms of, because it used to be in the old days, right? 60 to 70% of the reason why you talk to somebody was, hey, the resume looks great. And 30 to 40% of it was commentary from an internal or external recruiter. That's kind of moved a little bit. It's kind of shifted in that 30 to 40% of the reason why you talk to somebody should now be on the resume, based on the resume. 60 to 70 should be based off of your commentary, which leads to something interesting, which we'll talk about here today. It's becoming really, really critical for hiring managers, especially tech hiring managers, to work with their internal HR department or external HR to not look for keywords and instead look for specifics of what they're looking for. Because if you're just looking for keywords now, like I'll give you an example: candidate A and candidate B, both are DevOps people. Both will have Kubernetes. Both will have CI/CD process, Teradata, all those, Terraform, all the things you'd want to see. Candidate A has been on a team of 2 people. Candidate B has been on a team of 7. Almost identical resumes, but 2 extremely different candidates. Same thing in the dev space. Same thing with the PM space and BA space as well. So things have changed dramatically over the last 12 months. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Alex.
This is really a great topic because, I have heard from other people, not the details of what you're about to share with us, but that this is an issue. Right. So I really appreciate you doing it with us. So let's get into it. There's your picture again. And again, the topic is hiring in the age of AI. And I'll just read it and then you can tell us about it. If you are hiring and interviewing the same way you did 12 months ago, you need to change. Tell us about that.
So candidates have basically ChatGPT'd every one of your typical interview questions. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? All those questions have been ChatGPT to the nth degree. So your interview questions need to change. We'll talk about that here a little bit. Like I said before, candidates are using AI tools to generate resumes. I'll tell you a funny story. So I've told this to a couple of CIO friends of mine. I write my own job descriptions and have for a long, long time. So it was late on a Thursday. It must have been like 8 or 9 o'clock on a Thursday. I'm like, I want to get this done before Friday rolls around and I just run out of time on Friday. So I was writing a job description. It must have been 8 o'clock on a Thursday night. Yes, I am geeky enough that I do this on Thursday night. So I was typing for a SQL BI role, right? And I misspelled SQL once. I put SQ1 as opposed to SQL in one of the bullet points. Guess how many resumes by Friday morning at 9 o'clock I got with 7 years of SQ1 experience? About 2 dozen.
Yeah.
So there is no way that someone's as geeky as I am, and this happened to be at 9 o'clock or whatever on a Thursday night, saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to apply for roles on LinkedIn." And number two, there is no such thing as a Q1. So this told me something. This happened. I want to say back in.
Wait. So you put an app, a call for a job.
Right. I put a job description up on LinkedIn.
Job description on LinkedIn, and it had this fake code.
Yeah.
SQ1.
I misspelled SQL just on accident and said SQ1 as opposed to SQL. This must have been like December, January.
And you got like 2 dozen people that have had years of experience
in SQ1.
In SQ.
So that got me thinking. It got me thinking. Okay, wait a second.
Did you hire any of them?
Yeah, no. So what's causing this? And you're starting to see this happen all over the place. In that, like, I'll work on, most of my roles have a really strong business mindset to them, right? They'll talk about having that data that you're analyzing actually make an impact on the business. So my job descriptions oftentimes really paint a solid picture of not only who you're going to be working for, but what the real purpose of the role is. So I'm starting to see this. I just yesterday I was responding to candidates for a role I have in Indiana, where once you know it, about 70 to 80% of those resumes have percentages of impact on everything from ETL processes to speed of data, speed of this and speed of that. When in actuality, if you read through the bullet points, it doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's like increase ETL speed by 30%. Really? I'm not sure what you're trying to tell me there. Mm-hmm. So you're starting to see this happen where it's really becoming important to kind of cover the entire life cycle of finding candidates differently than you did, 12 months ago.
We're pre-12 months ago, pre-AI tools being available to everybody. It was weighed more towards the resume.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing. Mm-hmm. So, you could have a phenomenal resume and it was pretty much like, hey, you know what, this person's probably our fit. Let's just interview them to make sure we're not missing anything. And now you're saying it's different. The balance is different. You need to weigh more of the rest of the interview process as much, if not more, than the resume.
Exactly.
At this point.
Exactly. And that leads to the starting point. So you're right in that it used to be 30 to 40, like 70% of the reason why you talk to somebody. Great resume. You're like, fantastic, right?
Yeah, we're done. We'll just make sure. Yeah. Now, well, let's make sure we can get her or get them, okay. Right? Yeah. So go ahead. All right. So go ahead.
So the candidate pool is changed a little bit too, and now you have more candidates applying for roles as well. So that kind of complicates this issue. But this kind of colors the entire process. So let's start with job descriptions. Your job descriptions now can be a competitive advantage.
So job descriptions. All right, I think that's the next bullet. Why don't we just go ahead and move into that? So I'll read it. Your job descriptions are now a competitive advantage. Explain that.
So, and again, this goes to using AI improperly. In that both LinkedIn, Indeed, and even internal HR departments, they will repurpose job descriptions that they've had in the past. LinkedIn and Indeed will offer you to create a job description with AI. I'm encouraging hiring managers to not do that. Reason being is that I have simply lost count of the number of candidates that tell me they look at a job description, they don't know what they want. They don't know what that company wants. So those AI tools,
it's like a generic. It's become a generic job description.
Right, exactly. It doesn't tell you anything. So what I suggest is a couple things. Pare down your bullet points from the 50 gotta haves to the 6 or 7 absolute gotta haves. Start with Also, why do you want to work here? Don't talk about culture. Saying you have a winning culture is no longer a strategic advantage anymore. Everybody says this. It's like when companies say we're great at customer service. No, that's not a competitive advantage.
Does anybody ever say, you know what? We're like that. What was it, Dufflin in the office? We have a losing culture, and nobody wants to work here. We're begging you. Nobody says that.
Nobody says that.
Of course, they have a winning culture.
Yeah.
On
so
paper.
The key is just dive into why. So why do you want to work here?
Yeah.
Who are you going to be working for? What is the team like that you'll be working with? But focus in, make it a human tone. Sorry, like I said before, I write my own JDs from scratch. There's always a human tone to it. And again, I've lost, and I'm not trying to bloat here, but I've lost count of the candidates that tell me, hey, you know what? I applied to your job because of the JD. Even if it wasn't a fit, I wanted to chat with you.
Now, as part of your service, you actually help your clients, but I remember in our last conversation, which if you haven't watched it, everybody go watch his other video on our site go watch another video with Tom on our site, and it's all about the karma circle. I don't want to get into that too much here, but he talks about this where you actually help people. So if you haven't met or worked with Tom, I think you would actually help someone with this, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll help you with your JDs. So that's not anything I charge for. It's just part of what I do. But you have to have a human tone to it. Mm-hmm. You know, why do you want to work here? Who are you going to be working for? What are some things that, you know, are you as a hiring manager, not a micromanager? Fantastic. Mention that. Do you have a really high hit rate? Fantastic. Mention that. Those are the things that are strategic advantages, not we got a great culture or we had ping pong on Fridays. No, those are commodities.
Hey, don't knock ping pong. I like ping pong.
Well, those are commodities, but you know, I think we need to.
Everybody has them.
So that's the first thing. Make sure you paired on your bullet points of the 50 gotta haves as well to 6 or 7 that are digestible. What's your 30, 60, 90? If you can answer that question, fantastic. If you can't, you really got to think it over in terms of don't put 17 things of requirements or job responsibilities. What is your 30, 60, 90? In 30 days, I'm really hoping that you do this. In 60, this. 90, this. That's what your job description should have. That clarifies what are you looking for.
It's clarity.
Yeah,
they can see how they could win.
Exactly.
That's good.
So that's why your job descriptions are kind of a clear competitive advantage. And that's what you should start doing.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next one. And I like how you phrase this one. What to do when every resume looks great, and you added a comment, sometimes the best resumes are the worst candidates. So explain. What should you do?
So here's what you should do. Number one, expect that the candidates applying for roles aren't reading your job description, especially if it's generic. Now, the ones that I write, I do see comments where it's like, hey, I read your JD and I wanted to apply. But I ask C-level, VP, and director level hiring managers that are listening to this, whether you're in human resources, whether you're in IT, whether you're in operations, right? How often have you talked to a candidate and you can tell they kind of read your JD like 10 minutes before your interview? I bet you it's more than you want to admit. The reason for that goes back to that first point. Don't make your job descriptions generic. Make them have a human tone. But to this point, AI is being used to generate resumes. So how do you flow through those, right? How do you flow through those? The best thing to do is don't assume and challenge your own assumptions as a hiring manager. Oftentimes, hiring managers will have a think, oh, okay, they got this keyword, this and this phrase, this is phrased right, this is phrased right. Fantastic. Let's bring them in for an interview. I have an interesting story. Some of the very best candidates that I have placed that have stayed on for long periods of time had an original resume that would have never passed through an applicant tracking system or an ATS.
Today.
The reason being is that I didn't use a machine to do it. So this goes back to not relying on your ATS to screen through resumes. This helps you as a hiring manager and helps candidates as well. I've lost count again in terms of really high-level candidates, C-level candidates that get a rejection at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. Come on, let's be honest. You have your ATS machine on. responded to candidates at 11 o'clock on a Friday.
So it's automatically, so the ATS, because I haven't looked for a job since forever.
Mm-hmm.
So is what you're saying is that the ATS is the applicant tracking system,
right?
Is automatically reading these and it's doing the first pass,
right?
So you know, as an applicant, you really do have to now use these tools to counteract that,
right?
And make sure you have your keywords in there. Otherwise, you'll never get past the ATS. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. And here's where I'm telling hiring managers, especially in HR, stop relying on your ATS. You're doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing candidates a disservice. Again, this is where those job descriptions come in handy. This is where this process of recruiting has changed over the last 12 months. If you're using your ATS to filter through resumes and automatically reject people, stop it, because you are doing yourself a disservice. Like I said, some of the very best candidates I placed over the last few years have been ones where the original resume would have never paid it past an ATS.
So how do you
do it? So here's what you do instead.
Yeah.
Don't assume. Here's what you do. You put together a list of 4 or 5 questions, really no more than 6.
Yeah.
You confirm their visa status. You confirm their compensation numbers. You confirm a couple other things in reference to their skill sets. And here's the gotcha. Put in a couple questions in that email that you send to candidates that apply.
Yeah.
That would show that you're paying attention to the resume, but not so much. Because what you want to do is you want to put a couple questions in there where you're testing that candidate's patience a little bit. Every C-level VP and director level hiring manager listening to this podcast knows one great rule. They are going to hire people that are going to be business facing. They're not going to be sitting in front of a screen 24 hours a day. They're going to be interacting with real live people.
Mm-hmm.
Every hiring manager listening to this knows this great rule. What's the one thing they don't want? They don't want their VP of marketing or CFO or VP of operations coming to their door, knocking on their door and saying, "What the heck are you doing to me? Why was Jeremy in this meeting? He treated us like we were idiots." That's the very last thing that most hiring managers listening to this podcast want. So the reason why you ask questions prior to even talking to a candidate is to test 3 things. Their writing skills. Everybody says, "I've got great communication skills." Well, outstanding. Prove it. So you want to test their writing skills. Number 2, you want to confirm, are they in your compensation range? Do they, if you don't sponsor, you want to confirm that. But you ask a couple questions that are specific to the role that you're trying to fill.
Mm-hmm.
That tells you, again, communication skills, written communication skills, but it tells you, can they clearly explain themselves? And are they patient enough? Do they say, "See your resume"? Well, guess what? If they say, "See your resume," that's somebody you probably want to take a pass on. So you start, but don't assume and challenge your own assumptions. Just because the resume doesn't look perfect doesn't mean they wouldn't be a good fit. So there's lots of people in the security space looking for work right now. Lots and lots.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes you'll see hiring managers presume, oh, they don't have CyberArk, or they don't have Fortinet, or they don't have a CISSP. And you come to this automatic assumption of, oh, they're not a fit then. No, that's an improper assumption. Ask some questions to clarify your view and wait for their responses. This will probably cut your time in half in terms of the actual candidates you want to consider.
Oh,
because here's what happens.
Yeah.
You start sending questions out, you're going to figure out who's serious about a role versus who just is fishing. I call it shopping without a wallet. They're just shopping. They're just got their pole in the water. If they're serious, they'll respond to those questions. If they're not, move on. You didn't want them to begin with because they're just fishing, or like I say, shopping without a wallet.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure you ask those questions so you're not chasing the wrong candidates. You're chasing ones that have a genuine desire and a genuine interest. You had a podcast not that long ago, Alex, focused in on EQ, emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
You can that podcast, as well as other ones that that you've held as well, focus on a big factor that a lot of C-level, director and VP level execs that are listening to this understand. You hire for EQ, you train for everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So that genuine interest, that genuine desire, that passion, you can't teach that. Passion for cybersecurity, for example, you can't teach that. Either it's there or it's not. You can teach the rest. Right? So that's why you want to challenge your assumptions. So start out with some questions. Send those to ones that even you're not 100% sure. Wait for the responses. You'll be surprised. Sometimes people will say, oh my gosh, I got to send out 200 of these. No. You're going to do an initial screen. You're going to say, okay, these ones are maybes. These ones are pretty darn good. These ones are excellent. Go down to your maybes. Start sending out those questions. You'd be surprised at what you find. And you'd be surprised again on those ones that you originally would have thought, maybe not a fit, but then you start learning about them and you find out, wow, this guy or this lady, fantastic. So start there. That's how you start filtering through. Whenever the resume looks great, how do we filter that? And that's why I also say some of the best resumes are the worst candidates, because you will see people that have horrible written communication skills, horrible patience, horrible levels of EQ. From a technical standpoint, they may look brilliant, but you know what? If you hire that person, you're going to have an ulcer the size of Texas, and that's not something you want.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, this is really sound advice, and what I'm hearing is that the ETS systems, the whole automated environment, isn't really saving you time.
No.
So throttle the use of it to use it where it does save you time, and then re-engage, because as you said, if you're hiring for emotional intelligence and you can teach the rest, which any leadership role is what you should be doing,
right?
Then that's not something. Well, that is something you can test through questions for sure. But it's a lot better to look for those soft skills right up front.
Right.
So you got a quote you wanted to share?
Yeah. So everybody for the last several years, one of my best friends to talk to is a guy named Brad. He basically led software procurement for Walmart. He does the same thing for Discover. Brilliant guy. And Brad and I have kind of gone, Brad, one of the things Brad says is that there's been this race towards efficiency. We're going to buy this product. We're going to buy this ATS product. We're going to buy this for efficiency. It's efficient. It's efficient. Here's my quote. The price of increased efficiency is a lack of effectiveness. You can be efficient picking your nose. Doesn't mean you're effective. This is essentially what's happening in the software space. Is you have all these software skills that are designed to be efficient. The price of increased efficiency is a lack of effectiveness.
Interesting. I can see how that certainly applies to this category of hiring.
Right.
So, all right, well, let's keep moving. So many great quotes here.
Yeah.
So, question candidates prior to discussions to filter out candidates as opposed to relying. I think you just described.
Yeah, we just kind of covered that as well. And this again, efficiency versus effective.
So just for the slide, why don't you just?
Because they're supposedly really efficient, but they're horribly ineffective.
Just for the slide, why don't you just repeat what the advice is here, real quickly, and then add any other additional comments you want to make.
Sure. ATSs are supposedly amazingly efficient, but horribly ineffective. This goes to the price of increased efficiency. There's a lack of effectiveness. So don't let the machine do the thinking for you. You as the human should do the thinking. And again, just like in any requirements gathering and BA activity you're a part of within your enterprise, right? What do? You challenge assumptions. Turn that mirror on yourself. Challenge your own assumptions in hiring as well. And this is not something an ATS can do. This is you as a human using your own brain can do it. So it's becoming really important because you're seeing really great candidates get rejected for no good reason.
Okay, so I get that. So what do you mean exactly by question candidates prior to discussions? Can you explain that again?
Sure. So you're going to come up with 4 or 5 key questions that you as a hiring manager
Uh,
want answered. Visa status, salary. If it's an on-site role, confirm that they'll be on-site. If they need to relocate, confirm that they can actually relocate. But you're going to want to ask a couple technical questions as well that are relevant to the job. Make sure you're asking those questions because that'll judge writing skills. You want to judge that. Everybody says they have great comm skills. Well, prove it. Number 2, it helps you understand, okay, am I going to be wasting time with this candidate because they're way out of my salary range? Okay, well, this tells you, okay, maybe not spending time with this candidate would be a good idea. You also want to test a little bit of their patience. So sometimes you'll see people respond with, see a resume. Sorry, wrong answer. You want to make sure that you're having this candidate show you a level of patience in terms of their response, because everybody listening to this podcast knows this great thing. The last thing they want is their VP of marketing, VP of finance, CFO knocking on their door saying, you put Jeremy in this meeting, don't ever do that again.
right.
Treated us like a bunch of idiots.
Yeah.
You don't want that. So use these questions to help gauge, are they patient? What are their writing skills really like? Do they meet what you're wanting in terms of comp numbers, in terms of visa status and things like this? This is also going to cut your time in half because there are going to be a very significant portion of those candidates that are basically what I call shopping without a wallet. They're not really serious. They won't respond to these questions. That's good. That tells you, okay.
So you'll filter them out.
Candidate to begin with.
Yeah. So you filter out the people who don't want to answer the questions because they're just shopping.
Right.
And then you also filter out the people that maybe aren't such great communicators, and you want that.
Right. Exactly. Because
you don't want that. You want people that are good communicators.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this goes again to my comment of the price of increased efficiency. Everybody talks about ATS tools. That's great. They're efficient. The price of increased efficiency is a lack of effectiveness. There are so many fantastic candidates that are being rejected by ATS tools that should never be rejected.
That's
because
awesome.
They're fantastic. So you're using a tool to, basically, you're doing yourself a disservice by using this tool. So
got it.
Do yourself a favor, ask questions first before assuming.
Got it. Oh, let's move on. Interview questions need to change to adapt to the AI landscape. What do you mean by that?
This is a critical thing. So we've talked about a lot of things here, Alex, that would, in normal circumstances, would cause an HR department, a hiring manager, to have to basically redo everything. I'm not saying that you have to redo everything in your hiring process, but what I am saying is that there's certain things, simple things you can do to help you get better results, spend less time, and give your and do your company more get your company a better group of candidates, as well as again, you're doing yourself a disservice by letting the tools do the work. So the most important thing, however, if you listen to this podcast, you say, Tom, these are fantastic ideas, but you're living in Pollyannish land. I get you. If there's one thing that you get from this podcast, it's this. Your questions need to change because all candidates know the typical questions. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you know about us? All those questions have been ChatGPT to the nth degree. So you need to get your candidates off the resume. You don't want a resume reader. I was talking to one this morning. Great candidate from a resume standpoint, had everything from a BI stack standpoint that a client would want, but a resume reader. I actually caught the person reading his bullet points, bullet point by bullet point. No, wrong answer. You don't want that. You want to get that person off of their resume. So here's what you do. Start with questions like this. You're going to say something like, it's pretty clear to me that you've done some really good work wherever you've gone, and that's fantastic. But there's probably 2 or 3 roles, 2 or 3 projects where you just knocked it out of the park. Tell me all about it. Take as much time as you want. Guess what? They're going to talk to you about things that they're good at. They're not going to talk to you about things that they suck at. They're going to talk about things that they're good at. This helps you as a hiring manager realize, okay, are they talking about things that are relevant to the role that I'm trying to fill? Yes or no. If they are, fantastic. If they're not, that's fantastic as well, because as you're taking notes, they may be a fit for something else that you're working on, maybe 3 or 6, 9 months from now, right? Let them talk. They will tell you what they're good at by answering that question. Rather than saying, what are your strengths? By asking a question like this, it's open forum. They're going to tell you what they're good at. What you're going to want to listen to are subtleties. Now, this is where, again, getting them off the resume, and these are not AI-able. These are not chat GPT. You can't chat GPT these questions. Listen to subtleties. They're going to start telling you about things that they're good at. What you want to do is pivot off of that. You're going to say, tell me more about that. Now, some will go into even more detail, which is fantastic. Some you will tell, again, they're resume readers, which is okay. That's fine for a doer, but most of my roles are for thinkers. And it's not to say doers aren't thinkers. I'm not trying to start a spat here where all of a sudden I'll get like 70 pieces of hate mail saying I'm a doer. Does that mean I don't think? But you want to look for those thinkers. The second question is you want to talk about things like where those pivot points are in their career. So you're going to say something like this. Let's say for PM roles, right? BA roles, any role for that matter. You're going to say, the Jim I'm talking to now is different than the Jim I would have talked to in 2014 when you were at ABC Corp. What are some key technical skills that you've matured in that stretch of the time? What are some things you learned about yourself? Again, this is not something you can chat GPT. Ask that question. What are some things that make the Jim I'm talking to now? And just pick a time in their resume when you were at ABC Corp in 2014.
I like that one.
They're going to tell you how they changed. This also tells you, can they pivot? Can they learn from their mistakes? Have they changed? Everybody says growth. Here's another quote, Alex. Growth is no longer a reason for looking for your next job. Growth is what I call a Twinkie word. Looks good on the outside, but it has no food value. If you tell me what growth means to you, that's fantastic. So, red alert, if somebody says, I want growth. Okay. Bananas are nice, and I like yummy sunny days. That's a
mixed metaphor. Yummy summer days.
You give examples of what does growth mean. Now that is some meat. So this kind of goes to, again, have they grown in those last few years? You pivot off that question as your question number 3 is you're going to ask, those changes come through events, good projects, bad projects, good bosses, horrible bosses. What were those events that caused these changes to occur? Again, this isn't something you can chat GPT, and it takes them off the resume. Again, this tells you, can they grow? Number 2, are they bullshitting you? Are they BSing you? Correct myself. Are they just throwing out a word salad? Because you want to know if this person is really being honest with you, right? If they're giving you a word salad, are they really being honest with you? And again, this goes to, the things that you want in your team. The last thing you want is an ulcer the size of Texas. If somebody's lying to you in an interview, that ulcer the size of Texas is going to come in the first 30 days. and you're going to need a lot of Pepsid. So the next question is looking at looking at jobs is not fun. It's about as fun as getting a root canal. So when people look for their next job, they almost always have a picture, an idea in their head. They'll talk to their spouse, they'll talk to their family, do all those things. But in the process of figuring out what they want to do, they're going to come up with a picture, an idea of here's what I'll move for. And I'll say, what does that picture look like? Fill it with all kinds of color. Again, this helps you understand, are we going to be a fit for one another? One of my favorite hiring managers is a lady named Jean. She said, I use this question as my conference room test. If after 40 hours sitting in a conference room together, we're both still alive and we haven't killed each other, that probably means a good thing. So she kind of uses this as her conference room question of, okay, what does that picture look like? What do you really want to do? Now, some will have a really clear answer for that. They'll be like, I really want to do more BI work, but I want to focus on Azure Data Lakes and Azure Data Factory, building those pipelines and I want to do more Power BI work. I want to do more helping the business make solid decisions of the work I'm doing. That's a fantastic answer. Again, like I said before, growth isn't an answer anymore. Not unless there's color behind it. I want to advance my career. Sorry, that's a candy answer. It looks good on the outside, but there's no food value there. Tell me what that means to you. So sometimes people will say, well, I really want to grow. So this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity as a hiring manager. You're going to say, great. What does growth mean to you? It means different things to different people. Growth is as unique as the person. So you're going to want to listen. This is where as you've been kind of hearing the tone here. Listen for those subtleties, because they're going to tell you who they are. They're going to tell you what they want. My final question to ask is always something like this. In everyone's career, everybody's going to come across a favorite boss, a favorite supervisor, good group of teammates that they will work with again if given that opportunity. And you're going to say, I don't need to know their names. Keep the names private. I don't want to know that. But tell me more about them. Tell me all about them. Because this will tell you fit. This will tell you, okay, to Gene's conference room test, are we going to kill each other after 40 hours? Or is this going to be something where we're both going to win, right? So the follow-up...
These are great questions. These are great questions.
So the follow-up questions are even more relevant, because you're going to listen for subtleties. That's the main theme here. You're also going to listen for, who is this person really? Did they get a chance to relax? So a good tip is, when I start interviews out, I'll always start saying this. I've been recruiting technical talent now for 22 years. Been in the tech sector since the 90s. Trust me, there's nothing I have. You could surprise me with any words that you want.
Yeah.
I pretty much ever heard it all. You won't be able to shock me. I'll say, so I think of this as two people sitting down for a cup of coffee. So that to start this conversation out, just instead of having it be a persecutorial question and answer session, which is unfortunately how some of these interviews go, set that candidate at ease. Say, I've been doing this for a long time. Nothing you can say is going to surprise me. So just think of this as two people sitting down for a cup of coffee, just getting to know each other, figure out if we have a fit. So those questions. So like I said, we covered a lot in today's conversation.
Yeah.
If there's one thing you take away, those questions and the subtleties of those responses are what you're listening for. The second most important thing is, don't assume. Don't assume. If you're using your ATS to do the thinking, stop it. Stop it. You're doing yourself as a company a disservice. I know there's companies that have ATS tools that say, no, Tom, you're full of crap. There's no way. You're wrong. Blah, 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 blah. My last phone bill had roughly 5,500 minutes on it. You want to know how many minutes of that time just in the last month I heard from candidates telling ATS tools absolutely stink? It's about 95%. Stop using your ATS.
Well, that's great. So I have a feeling you're kind of climbing an uphill battle with some of this advice.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to get rid of ETS. In fact, I think you should have a campaign. This man wants you to turn off your ETS system. I think you get a lot of exposure. But it sounds like you are missing. First of all, you're making the process longer. Assuming you actually are looking for people and don't already know who you're going to hire, and you just need to do the process, right? To show the regulators, hey, we follow the process. That's a different thing. But it's what I'm hearing is you're making the process potentially longer in the long run, because the ETS can get gamed.
Right.
And the people that are gaming it aren't necessarily your better recruits.
Right.
And
it's almost
so
as if bot versus bot. Canada's using Canada's using AI to generate resumes to combat a bot that's basically an ATS, and they're going head to head against each other. That's a losing battle.
Yeah. So, as a candidate, by the way, what I'm hearing is make sure you're botted up to at least get through that. If you don't know someone in the company, to at least get through that first pass, because you'll never get past.
You have to do So one of the things that in the
So
tips that I send
it's
to
a
candidates sometimes is, instead of using an AI tool to do it, basically what you want to do is create silos of your resume. So let's say you're a BI person, right?
mm,
That also has some BA skills and some data analyst skills. You're going to have 2 or 3 different resumes. One that's going to be purely BI in focus, one that's going to be BA in focus, one that's going to be DA in focus, and one that combines all of them. Take a look at print out 7 or 8 job descriptions from the roles that you're applying to. Yep, I get it. You may be applying to everything on the planet. That's great. But for most people that are sane, you're probably applying to 3 or 4 different kinds of roles. So print out 7 or 8 JDs for those 3 or 4 different kinds of roles and do it yourself. Start looking at common patterns, common themes, common keywords in those job descriptions, and we're honest and accurate. For the love of all this good and pure, honest and accurate, because this is where I see these AI tools really kind of going off the rails, in that they're not making that candidate's resume lie, but they're stretching the truth just a little bit. They're dancing that line of being untruthful, and that's not something you as a candidate want to do. So instead, do it yourself. Put a resume together that has those commonalities for that BA, DA, BI, and all 3. What you're going to do is you're going to have a resume that firmly sits in those piles, and then use that resume to apply for those roles. That, again, like I said, some of the best candidates I placed started off that way, where that original resume was, I could do degrees of separation. They have this, okay, they got this, and okay, they got this. That means they got to have this. So make sure you have the buckets, so like different silos of resume. That's going to do you much more favor than using an AI tool. But you're right, Alex. You need to at least have, that's the basics. You at least need to have a resume that reflects the requirements and responsibilities for
you got to get through the machine. There's no way around it.
And so that's interesting. You, again, challenging those assumptions. This is why you send questions. Don't assume.
Well, anyway, you can still filter. You still can use it to filter people, because if they don't have the basics, then you don't want to talk to them anyways. But you can't assume anymore that just because they got through filter 1 that they have the basics. That's the bottom line.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So you got to use these other, and you're not really testing for EQ unless you give them a test. Hey, okay, you passed that. Now you got to take our EQ test. That's valid.
Right.
You know, I told the story in that other video you referenced. I took, when I was in the first couple of sales jobs for big companies.
Right.
My first sales job, I didn't have to do that, but formal sales job. But then I started working for bigger companies. That was part of the process. They would give you tests to see if you were the kind of person that would fit in their environment, and also take action. You know, because salesperson, they wanted hunters. They wanted to see if you were a hunter or a farmer. They wanted to see what your natural, emotional intelligence was. Would you be a fit in team selling, for example? Back in the day when I was doing that. And to tell you the truth, I was more of a hunter, and I had to learn team selling. But they did do what you're suggesting, because back then there was a lot of in-person interviews. We didn't have all this stuff online. Right. So a lot of the stuff that you're talking about sounds very familiar. That's what people used to do. And you're saying that maybe it's time to go back to some of the basics now.
Yeah. You bring up and again, an interesting quote here is that we're moving towards something rather dangerous, in my view, and that we are taking the human out of human resources. Now is the time, perhaps more than any other, where we need as much human as possible. We need as much human as possible in human resources. Right now, what's happening is you're taking the human out for the sake of efficiency. Again, going back to that quote that we had before, the price of increased efficiency is a lack of effectiveness.
That's really interesting. I have to look that one up. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been awesome. Really a great job today. Any parting comments you want to make?
Other than Alex, thanks for hosting this. Anybody that's interested, you'll have a link to my LinkedIn profile. There are CIOs that are listening to this that are dear friends of mine. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming along for the party.
Yeah, it's been great. And I just want to remind everybody, if you haven't seen Tom's other video or podcast with me about, we call it the Circle of Karma. That's what I named it. Be sure and watch that. And he is serious about helping people. So be sure and reach out to him if you want help on any of these things. And again, you can watch all of our videos at technologyexecutivesclub.com. We have the new YouTube channel called Technology Executives Review, so you can watch all of them. At the time I'm recording this, you can't watch all of them there. We just launched the channel, but you can. We're putting all. It's going to align with the podcast, and then we'll put all the putting all the shorts on there, so you'll be able to do that. Listen to our podcast under Technology Executives Review at Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts, as well as our site. If you're at our site, be sure and join our complimentary Insiders Club, which is essentially our newsletter service. You can keep up to date with great content like the one that you're watching today with Tom, as well as some other stuff. And if you want to get involved and be a regular on our media network, be sure and reach out to us and ask about our Board of Advisors program. And the Board of Advisors is the Board of Advisors to the technology community. And it's also a great way to help others like you just saw Tom do while you expand your executive brand and build your network. So be sure, if that's of interest to you, book a discovery call on our site. Thank you for attending. Thanks again, Tom. We appreciate you doing this for our community. And it's our honor to serve you and your team. Again, visit